This episode of Just Joshing is sponsored by Indie Imprint. Indie Imprint supports creators by creators. Whether you are writing a book or creating a video game, Indie Imprint works with its clients to produce, edit, and present their projects to the world. For more information, check out their website at www.indieimprint.com.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 365 of Just Joshing. I'm your host, Joshua Pentelaresco. I write stuff and podcasts, too, and I gotta say, I can draw as well. And today is another reading of Alice in Wonderland. This is Alice in Wonderland, Chapter 8, the strangest croquet game you've ever heard in your life. And, I really enjoy Alice in Wonderland. I can't believe how fun it was, or how I remembered, but then you forget, and then you remember again when you read it. It is a crazy, crazy story. I'm obviously, particularly this Croquet chapter for me personally, is going to be a very big focus of Alice 1. And I get to make my own rules up of Croquet, which is, I think, it's a very different, it's going to be a very different kind of game. It's going to be a little bit wilder than maybe even this one. Although I do have an interesting solution to flamingos. That all said, we'll get to that another day, another time. Like I said, I've been changing the format of everything since we are in the Twitch era. I'm almost halfway to being an affiliate already, which is actually mind-boggling to me how quickly that's come. I had also got my first 100 followers as a YouTuber, which I think is pretty cool. I only really started building my YouTube audience very, very, very slowly, and I want to thank everybody that's followed me to this point. It's not all fun and roses. Like I said, we'll talk about my Patreon in a second. I'm just kind of curious out there, what you can do. But this has been a very interesting first month doing this. I've had some incredible guests. I'm really proud of the interviews I did this week, especially. So, Rich Perot, we're going to set a little section up, but I want to talk about the scheduled interviews. I had a really fun one with Tony Phillips. I really, really loved that chat. That conversation's amazing. The cool thing is the show now with the visual element does feel a lot different. My style, I think, fits the visual element very well, but it feels more engaging. I just had this interview with Tim Niederreiter today, which is fun. It's episode 467. I'm kind of doing these out of order, kind of, sort of, but it's my podcast. I can do what I want. But it's forced me to be more engaged with my speakers in the past, which is, I think, a really interesting thing. I think I remember, the thing I really miss about this time because of COVID is I used to do these audio interviews in cafes and bars, and I really dug that experience. I still want to capture that, and I still may capture that audio from time to time because I really, really do like that format still. But the visual, the Twitch, the ability to connect across country to various people, this has been kind of a godsend. This is almost like a show built for this time. But it does capture a little of that feeling when I'm talking to Ron Friedman this week about science fiction conversation, or I'm talking to Tim, or whether I'm talking to, Mog Park. Mog was the other chat last week. I was like, wow, this is good. Like Tony and Mog, I felt like I really clicked. Those are two interviews that might make my top 20 at the end of the year. Tony, I wish it could have gone longer, but I think we went really good with time we had. And Mog, I kind of wish that was exactly what I wanted with the drink and draw. I'm doing drinking and drawing, and it's been real fun to have people just come on and are willing to draw with me, which is kind of weird to me because this is a skill set I never thought I'd use or do or anything like that. This week I have Elsa Garza. We're doing Alice in Wonderland stuff. I'll be drawing from what I've been reading from, actually, which is the annotated Alice, which is a complete, it's an old school thing. The drawings are by Martin Gardner. It's an old school book. I found it at Biblioasis in Windsor, and I thought it was a really cool steal and cool find, and so that's given me some different ideas as well. It definitely has more of an animalistic and very less the Disney thing you imagine it to be, which I think is a good thing. Alice is a children's story, and I think, honestly, where my theory of horror and young adult, like Grimm's Fairy Tale, the whole link there, I think this story encapsulates it perfectly. There's some horrifying things when you look below the surface of Alice in Wonderland. But it's also just a really wild ride, and it fits. Like, it's got the wonder. It's literally a wonderland of adventure, but it's also a very dark book at the same time. It's a perfect combination of horror and wonder. I think kids' books do that very well. Lights Out is about a third of the way done, about 10,000 words into it. I'm going to try to get the rest of it done this weekend. This is the last week I work as severely on the day job. I have, like I said, a temporary job. I've made myself a promise, and it looks like I have this job as long as I want it, which is kind of nice. Now, I could be wrong. December 31st might come to say, Josh, get lost, which is totally fine by me, too. I am so in like the Zen state of, I don't work for people anymore. I work for me, and this job is just enough work to keep some money coming in. I could use, definitely, but it's also it gives me just enough to do what I need to do, but keeps me uncomfortable enough to keep going with what I'm doing. So I consider this my job. I consider this is what I do every day. Like, literally every day, no matter what, even on the weekends when I'm not streaming. This is what I do. So, I got an amazing Final 5 guest or so still to come. I got Kelsey Ray Barthel today. It'll be airing at about 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Got that. Thursday I have Jennifer on, 9 p.m. Same thing, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm looking forward to that. Jen has been just quietly one of my favorite people, honestly. There's a lot more to her, and she's very smart, very, very, very skilled, and honestly gave me a really nice review on the Cloud Diver, which is really sweet, and I really appreciate it. So thanks, Jen. I'm looking forward to talking to you. And then Friday, I got Elsa Garza for the Drink and Draw. And then next week, it's Christina Z, Joe Compton, and Carly Yates are my last interviews. And I'm also going to be taking one of my Rich Perota conversations and making it probably the last interview aired for the year. Yeah. So the Rich Perota interview I did in week 2 is probably the best thing I've ever done. Honest to God. So John Maven is if I think back, there was a year I did 3 really amazing conversations. Sophia Evangelina, John Maven, Ellen Michelle. Ellen is such a passionate person. She pulls everything in her sleeve. She's just an amazing human being. And I really dug getting to know and meet her. That was a great interview. Sophia, being who she is she's secretly the biggest superstar of them all. And that was a fun interview too, just something different. And as far as John goes, John was literally the epic center of, like, we started in a very dark place and we ended in a very happy one. And I interviewed John next month, and John's coming back on the podcast, so I'm sure we'll have a great conversation again, because I miss him. But the thing that I remember is that roller coaster ride. And Rich Perota, the first conversation especially, was that roller coaster ride. Rich is just beating cancer. That's a really, really awesome place to start. He won a really big battle, and then we just had fun. I have never had so much fun with somebody. Rich loves what he does. I love that conversation. It might be the best thing I've done this year. Like, literally, I'm really proud of that, being part of that, having that opportunity to engage with someone that skilled and that talented. Rich is a passionate human being. He has a great book coming out next year. I can't wait, and it's going to be amazing. And he's definitely going to be back on the podcast again, or another Drink and Draw. I'm going to probably make this a once a month deal, because I love hanging out with him. He's such a cool dude. But yeah, just Rich is a very, very, very awesome human being, a great person, and I'm really happy he wanted to come on my show. But it's not all good. I mean, in terms of, I don't know how I'm going to be making money with this starting next month. My sponsorship with Indie Imprint is done this month. I have nothing but good things to say about Indie Imprint. They treated me very good. Mike, you're an awesome man. I really thank you for everything you did for me. I'm looking forward, I'm glad you got to see me get to this point, and I wish you nothing but the best with long-play games and your video game careers. You and Jess deserve all the best. You really, really do. And the invite's still there. Whenever you want to come on the show, just let me come on the show. So, this is what I'm So I'm trying to, build up my Patreon. And for whatever reason, the Patreon is just not clicking. Now, Twitch is I'm halfway to being an affiliate. YouTube, the YouTube guidelines to become an affiliate are a long way away. Maybe not that long. I got like a bunch of followers really quick, but I know but like everything else, it's a grind, and it's probably going to take me a few more months to really, really get to where I want to get to with both Twitch and YouTube, especially Twitch. Twitch has been my focus. That's kind of been my place to go. It's a really cool place, actually. I'm exploring it. I'm not cool enough to watch television anymore, but I am cool enough to watch people stream. There's some great channels I subscribe to. Jet Sword, Mishigatsu. I'm talking to you guys in particular. But I've had some good chats with a bunch of people, so I'm also meeting people who are subscribing to my stream. You've done something good when a 13-year-old kid is skipping class to watch your show. So you got something good there. But it's a process, and it's going to take a while to build it to where I want to go. And the scale is what you're seeing here. This show is part still going with just a one audio only episode a week as a reward to anyone that's been listening for this long. I'm going to keep reading stories here. I don't know if I'm going to have guests here. The one thing, this has been the show that was the hardest to get guests to do. Guests, I love having guests coming to read. I really do. But for whatever reason, I'll get lots of yeses, and every so often I just don't get people that deliver. I had some great readers. Devin Kane was awesome. I love Talina. Swati, oh my gosh, that's an incredible read. You should listen to that episode if you haven't already. I love it when people come and read on my show, but the thing about it is, for whatever reason, a lot of authors don't seem to love coming to read on my show, which is fine. It's totally their thing. I'm not going to knock it. And like I said, since we're in a new format, I figured I'd try this and a quick update what's going on. Lights Out's very much on the go. I've taken a break from Corey. So when this story's written, I go back to Corey. I try to finish Corey next month. It'll be my first novel. I have a cover artist already for that. Anvu is going to be probably the cover artist for it if all goes to plan. And then once that book's done, I'm going to be working on Alice 1. After that, I'm going to do my second Alice story. And then once that's done, then I go back to the Cloud Diver, unless something else comes and grabs my fancy. But it's going to be, or I might even do the second Corey book before I do the Cloud Diver. We'll see. We'll kind of see how it goes. The goal is, like I said, something I was going to mention. I mentioned this as the theme for this one is how bad do you really want it? And I kind of want, there's a story about a guy looking for this guru and asking how this guru became so successful. So this guru goes to the guy, well, meet me on the beach at 4 a.m. So the guy shows up all suited up at 4 a.m. The guru is there, and he goes, come with me to the water. Guy looks at his suit, and that little sad it's about to get ruined, but you know what? It is what it is, and he joins the guru in the water. They go all the way to their waists, and it goes, and the guru goes, keep going, let's keep going. And the guru took him all the way out even farther, past the shoulders. And, the guy's getting nervous, what the hell's this guru doing? Let's keep going, keep going. So they go a step further, and then the guru grabs the guy and puts him in the water, dunks him in. Guy's struggling to breathe, panting, going, and just for a second there, it looks like things are about to get bleak. And then the guru let him go, and he went up. And then when he got up, it's like, well, what did you want to do? The guy just gasped. I wanted to breathe. You wanted that more than anything, right? Yeah. So that's what it takes. That's what it takes. You have to believe you can do it. You have to want it more than anything else, though, too. And that's a really, really tough thing for a lot of people because life's distractions. Look, we got bills to pay. Holy shit. And do we have bills to pay, especially right now? I got to get freelance work. I got to look for this. I got to look for that. I have to, make sure I have income coming in so I can feed myself and all that other wonderful fun stuff right now. But again, I'm past the point where I want a regular job. So I'm trying to go, I want this more than I want the job. And so that's all I'm doing. I am going forward because I don't want to do this anymore, working for people. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm like, I found my niche. My niche is talking to people and doing their thing and all that other wonderful fun stuff. So that's what I'm going to focus on. I want that more than anything else. And so this is me kind of talking to you. What do you want to see from me in my Patreon? What would it take to get you to help support my podcast? If you are listening to it and wondering, it's a legit question, even if it's just $1 a month. Like, what would it take for you to put your hard-earned money to become a supporter of this podcast? Because this podcast is going to be listener supported going forward, at least for the next little while. So I'm asking just as a feedback from you guys. What do you think? What do I need to do? The other thing I'm going to ask for feedback on is, what do you think of the current show? Are the episodes too long? Do you want me to break the drink and draws into 2 parts? Do you want me to keep it as is? These are longer shows when I do these streams. It's going to be a 2-act show from here on in. It's not going to be anymore the intro, interview, conclusion. It's going to be right to the conversation. My intro's in the stream, my conclusion's in the stream, and that's it. Like, it's going to be a stream, sponsor, intro, like, content, exit, and that's what's going to be going forward. Like I said, I'm scaling up. I noticed, like, when I first did this, there was a drop in my numbers. Now the numbers are coming back, which is kind of good, and now they're expanding in different places as well, which is a very cool thing. Like I said, I'm using Restream.io to stream on Facebook as well. So I'm going to ask a favor. If you do have a Twitch account and you see me on Facebook, I'm asking that you watch it on my Twitch channel. The Twitch channel is... So there's 2 requirements to becoming an affiliate. 3 people watching on my Twitch and 50 followers. At the rate I'm going to get 50 followers probably sometime next month, which is awesome. I can't believe how quickly this is going. But, yeah, watch. If you have a Twitch account, watch it there. That'd be great. Not that I don't appreciate my people that do watch it on Facebook or that comment on Facebook, but honestly, you do me a bigger favor if you do it on Twitch. So if you're listening to this, help me. That'd be great. Alright, so beyond that, that's the good, the bad, the ugly. This is everything that's happening with this week. And what do you think of this format, too? I feel like this is kind of where my newsletter should be. And this is what I'm gonna. So this is kind of where I'm gonna be inspirational. This is kind of be like when I talk about just me personally. And if I have a guest, I'll condense this to like 5 minutes. But I feel like this is me just. I'm able to, if I'm going to have a moment of diarrhea at all, considering I don't do the audio shows very much anymore, this is it. This is where it's going. So, beyond all that, I think it's time to go to our little bit of round of croquet. So let me go to Alice in Wonderland. Chapter 8. The Queen's Croquet Ground. A large rose tree stood near the entrance of the garden. The roses growing on it were white, but there were 3 gardeners at it, busily planting them red. Alice thought this was a very curious thing, as she went nearer to watch them, and, just as she came up to them, she heard one of them say, "Look out now, Five! Don't go splashing paint over me like that!" "I couldn't help it," said Five in a sulky tone. "Seven jogged my elbow." On which Seven looked up and said, "That's right, Five. Always lay the blame on others." "You'd better not talk," said Five. "I heard the Queen say only yesterday you deserved to be beheaded." "What for?" said the one who had spoken first. "That's none of your business, too," said Seven. "Yes, it is his business," said Five, "and I'll tell him. It was for bringing the cook tulip roots instead of onions." Seven flung down his brush, and had just begun, well, of all the unjust things, when his eye chanced to fall upon Alice. As she stood watching them, and he checked himself suddenly, the others looked round also, and all of them bowed low. "Would you tell me, please," said Alice a little timidly, "why are you painting those roses?" Five and Seven said nothing, but looked at Two. Two began in low voice. "Why, the fact is, you see, miss, that this here ought to have been a red rose tree, and we put a white one in by mistake, and if the Queen was to find out, we should all have our heads cut off, you know. So, you see, miss, we're doing our best afore she comes to." At this moment Five, who had been anxiously looking across the garden, called out, "The Queen! The Queen!" and the 3 gardeners instantly threw themselves flat on their faces. There was a sound of many footsteps, and Alice looked round, eager to see the Queen. First came 10 soldiers carrying clubs. These were all shaped like the 3 gardeners, oblong and flat, with their hands and feet at the corners, next to the 10 courtiers. They were ornamented all over with diamonds, and walked 2 and 2, as the soldiers did. After these came the royal children. There were 10 of them, and the little dears came jumping merrily along, hand in couples. They were all ornamented with hearts. Next came the guests, mostly kings and queens, and among them Alice recognized the white rabbit, who was talking in a hurried, nervous manner, smiling at everything that was said, and went by without noticing her. Then followed the knave of hearts, carrying the king's crown on a crimson velvet cushion, and last of all this grand procession came the king and the queen of hearts. Alice was rather doubtful whether she ought not to lie down on her face like the 3 gardeners, but she could not remember ever having heard of such a rule at processions. And besides, what would be the use of a procession, thought she, if people had all to lie down on their faces so that they couldn't see it? So she stood where she was, and waited. When the procession came opposite to Alice, they all stopped and looked at her, and the queen said severely, "Who is this?" she said to the knave of hearts, who only bowed and smiled in reply. "Idiot," said the queen, tossing her head impatiently, and turning to Alice, she went on, "What's your name, child?" "My name is Alice, so please your majesty," said Alice very politely, but she added to herself, "Why, they're only a pack of cards, after all. I needn't be afraid of them." "And who are these?" said the queen, pointing to the 3 gardeners who were lying round the rose tree, for, you see, they were lying on their faces, and the pattern on their backs was the same as the rest of the pack. She could not tell whether they were gardeners, or soldiers, or courtiers, or 3 of her own children. "How should I know?" said Alice, surprised at her own courage. "It's no business of mine." The queen turned crimson with fury, and, after glaring at her for a moment like a wild beast, began screaming, "Off with her head! Off with—" "Nonsense," said Alice, very loudly and decidedly, and the queen was silent. The king laid his hand upon her arm and timidly said, "Consider, my dear, she is only a child." The queen turned angrily away from him and said to the knave, "Turn them over." The knave did so very carefully with one foot. "Get up," said the queen in a shrill, loud voice, and the 3 gardeners instantly jumped up and began bowing to the king, the queen, the royal children, and everybody else. "Leave off that," screamed the queen. "You make me giddy." And then, turning to the rose tree, she went on, "What have you been doing here?" "May it please your majesty," said Sue in a very humble tone, going down on one knee as he spoke, "we were trying—" "I see," said the queen, who had meanwhile been examining the roses. "Off with their heads!" said the procession moved on. 3 of the soldiers remained behind to execute the unfortunate garters, who ran to Alice for protection. "You shan't be beheaded," said Alice, and she put them into a large flower pot that stood near. The 3 soldiers wandered about for a minute or 2 looking for them, and then quietly marched off after the others. "Are their heads off?" shouted the queen. "Their heads are gone, if it please your majesty," the soldier shouted in reply. "That's right," said the queen. "Can you play croquet?" The soldiers were silent and looked at Alice, as the question was evidently meant for her. "Yes!" shouted Alice. "Come on, then!" roared the queen, and Alice joined the procession, wondering very much what would happen next. It's a very fine day," said a timid voice at her side. She was walking by the white rabbit, who was peeping anxiously into her face. "Very," said Alice. "Where's the Duchess?" "Hush, hush," said the rabbit in a low, hurried tone. He looked anxiously over his shoulder, and he spoke, as he raised himself upon tiptoe, put his mouth close to her ear, and whispered, "She's under sentence for execution." "What for?" said Alice. "Did you say what a pity?" the rabbit said. "No, I didn't," said Alice. "I don't think this is all a pity. I said what for." "She boxed the queen's ears," the rabbit began. Alice gave a little scream of laughter. "Oh, hush," the rabbit whispered in a frightened tone. "The queen will hear you. You see, she came out of the and the queen said—" "Get to your places," shouted the queen in a voice of thunder, and people began running around in all directions, tumbling up against each other. However, they got settled down in a minute or 2, and the game began. Alice thought she had never seen such a curious croquet gown in her life. It was all ridges and furrows. The croquet balls were live hedgehogs, and the mallets live flamingos. And the soldiers had to double themselves up and stand on their hands and feet to make the arches. The chief difficulty Alice found at first was in managing her flamingo. She succeeded in getting its body tucked away, comfortably enough, under her arm, with its legs hanging down, but generally, just as she got its neck nicely straightened out and was going to give the hedgehog a blow with its head, it would twist itself round and look up at her face with such a puzzled expression that she could not help bursting out laughing. And, when she had got its head down and was going to begin again, it was very provoking to find that the hedgehog had unrolled itself and was in the act of crawling away. Besides all this, there was generally a ridge or a furrow in the way wherever she wanted to send the hedgehog to, and, as the doubled-up soldiers were always getting up and walking off to other parts of the ground, Alice soon came to the conclusion that it was a very difficult game indeed. The players all played at once, without waiting for turns, quarreling all the while and fighting for the hedgehogs, and in a very short time the queen was in a furious passion, and went stamping about and shouting, "Off with his head!" or "Off with her head!" about once a minute. Alice began to feel very uneasy. To be sure, she had not as yet had any dispute with the queen, but she knew that might happen any minute, and then, thought she, what would become of me? They're dreadfully fond of beheading people here. The great wonder is that there's anyone left alive. She was looking about for some way of escape, and wondering whether she could get away without being seen, when she noticed a curious appearance in the air. It puzzled her very much at first, but after watching it a minute or two she made it out to be a grin, and she said to herself, "It's the Cheshire Cat. Now I shall have somebody to talk to." "How are you getting on?" said the cat, as soon as there was mouth enough for it to speak with. Alice waited till the eyes appeared and then nodded. "It's no use speaking to it," she thought, "till its ears have come, or at least one of them." In another minute the whole head appeared, and then Alice put down her flamingo, and began an account of the game, feeling very glad she had someone to listen to her. The cat seemed to think there was more than enough of it now in sight, and no more of it appeared. "I don't think they play at all fairly," Alice began in rather a complaining tone, "and they all quarrel so dreadfully one can't hear oneself speak. And they don't seem to have any rules in particular. At least, if there are, nobody attends to them, and you've no idea how confusing it is all the things being alive. For instance, there's an arch I've got to go through next, walking around at the other end of the ground, and I should have croqueted the queen's hedgehog just now, only it ran away when it saw mine coming." "How do you like the queen?" said the cat in a low voice. "Not at all," said Alice. "She's so extremely—" Just then she noticed that the queen was close behind her, listening, so she went on, "Likely to win, and it's hardly worth while finishing the game." The queen smiled and passed on. "Who are you talking to?" said the king, coming up to Alice and looking at the cat's head with great curiosity. "It's a friend of mine, a Cheshire Cat," said Alice. "Allow me to introduce it." "I don't like the look of it at all," said the king. "However, it may kiss my hand if it likes." "I'd rather not," the cat remarked. "Don't be impertinent," said the king. "And don't look at me like that." He got behind Alice as he spoke. "A cat may look at a king," said Alice. "I read that in some book, but I don't remember where." "Well, it must be removed," said the king, very decidedly, and he called to the queen, who was passing at the moment. "My dear, I wish you'd have this cat removed." The queen had only one way of settling all difficulties, great or small. "Off with his head," she said, without even looking around. "I'll fetch the executioner myself," said the king eagerly, and he hurried off. Alice thought she might as well go back to see how the game was going on, as she heard the queen's voice in the distance, screaming with passion. She had already heard her sentence 3 of her players to be executed for having missed their turns, and she did not like the look of things at all, as the game was in such a confusion that she never knew whether it was her turn or not. So she went off in search of her hedgehog. The hedgehog was engaged in a fight with another hedgehog, which seemed to Alice an excellent opportunity for croqueting one of them to the other. The only difficulty was that her flamingo had gone across the other side of the garden, where Alice could see was trying in a helpless sort of way to fly up into a tree. By the time she had caught the flamingo and brought it back, the fight was over and both the hedgehogs were out of sight. But it doesn't matter much, thought Alice. Of all the arches are gone from this side of the ground. So she tucked away under her arm that might not escape again, and went back to have a little more conversation with her friend. When she got back to the Cheshire Cat, she was surprised to find quite a large crowd collected around it. There was a dispute going on between the executioner, the king, and the queen, who were all talking at once, while all the rest were quite silent and looked very uncomfortable. The moment Alice appeared, she was appalled by all three. They settled the question, and they repeated their arguments to her, though, as they all spoke at once, she found it very hard to make out exactly what they said. The executioner argument was that you couldn't cut off a head unless there was a body to cut it off from, that he had never had to do such a thing before, and he wasn't going to begin at his time of life. The king's argument was that anything that had a head could be beheaded, and that you weren't to talk nonsense. The queen's argument was that if something wasn't done about it in less than no time, she'd have everybody executed all round. It was this last remark that made the whole party look so grave and anxious. Alice could think of nothing else to say but, "It belongs to the Duchess. You better ask her about it." "She's in prison," the queen said to her executioner. "Fetch her here," and the executioner went off like an arrow. The cat's head began fading away the moment he was gone, and by the time he had come back with the Duchess, it had entirely disappeared. So the king and the executioner went wildly up and down, looking for it while the rest of the party went back to the game. It's always the oddest little game of croquet you ever heard, don't you? I mean, that's just what makes Alice in Wonderland Alice in Wonderland. Chapter 9, we get to the Duchess and the Queen, and we'll see who goes off with their head next. But that's next week. That's the end of this week. So, thanks very much for listening to this podcast. Yeah, like I said, I'm looking for feedback here from everybody that's listening. So if anyone's got something that's a suggestion, that'd be great. If you want to support the podcast, though, you can do so a number of different ways. Subscribe to the podcast. I'm on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, Deezer, Audible, you name it. The podcast platform, I am there. So if you guys want to just hit the subscribe button, leave a review, tell your friends, let people know I'm out there, that'd be great. I have a YouTube channel, Joshua Pantellaresco. Definitely find me there. I have a Twitch channel, twitch.tv/JustJoshingPodcast. Give me a subscribe, watch the streams live. You can do so there. Always a blast. I have merchandise available at jpantellaresco.redbubble.com. Definitely buy a t-shirt or a mug to support the podcast. I have a tip jar, a PayPal tip jar, currently on my main page on Podomatic. If you're listening to it there, you might want to add something. That'd be cool. Buy my books. Alice Zero and the Cloud Diver are available now, courtesy of Amazon. I'm also got the Watcher, Storm Dancer, Wandering God available through MirrorWorldPublishing.com if you want to do so there. Stay inspired, guys. Keep shining in the darkness. Next week we'll talk about Lights Out, I hope, and my next book, and also kind of wrap up the year and look at it back from where we were to where we began. But until then, guys, keep on rocking in the free world.
Josh.